and got to meet him and found him to be a most charming and interesting character. A guy with a lot of vision. You know, he'd always talk about these dreams that he had. And son of a gun, I saw him live out that dream. And I saw Chuck become a millionaire, lose it, and become a millionaire again. He was a guy that, man, I tell you what, few guys like him come down the pike in your life. I was fortunate enough to meet him as a young man and knew him through his entire life, and just was proud to know that I had worked with him a couple of times. I worked with him at WFLA in the 80s, and that's when he started For the People.
Yeah.
And that's, I remember at his earliest concept, I said, this thing is going to go. And there was a couple of people saying, man, who's going to call up and want to ask legal questions or talk to a lawyer that Chuck might have on as a guest? I said, I'm telling you, Chuck's going to make this go. Don't ever bet against Chuck. And son of a gun if he didn't. And I'm very, very, very sad by his passing. And I feel like I've lost a great broadcaster, but a great friend.
He had a special quality or qualities, not just one particular thing. He really cared about what he did, and the people that he made friends with. He was just funny and witty and a visionary, just so smart. And he was miles ahead of the competition. I mean, he would cook up these things that, yeah, most people would think he was absolutely nuts. And like you mentioned, he would just do it.
Oh no, and I tell you, he's done so much in his life. You know, there's a lot of stuff that people probably will never know that Chuck had a finger in. You know, but
yeah,
he was,
talk radio.
Smart guy. Yeah, he was a smart guy. He redefined talk radio, man, in the 70s and 80s. I mean, I remember, man, he was responsible for the start of our program, AM Tampa Bay, because WFLA was a music station. And in 1985, a hurricane came by that was lingering off the coast of Florida. It kept doing loop-de-loops up and down the coast, a figure eight. You know, it wouldn't leave. It wouldn't get any worse, but it wouldn't leave. And when that storm first hit, they were evacuating Pinellas County. But there was no station in town that was doing hurricane coverage. I mean, it was like they might give you a little report at 5 minutes past the hour and then go back to playing music. But we got Chuck to come in overnight along with Jack Harris, and they hosted the entire storm overnight and guided people in their evacuation efforts out of Pinellas County. And that was what turned WFLA into a talk station in 1985.
I never knew that. I did know that he told me about that hurricane, but he never told me about what that did and the change of format and the opportunities. But I'll tell you, he had fond memories of working with you and loved working for WFLA. And he did remember that hurricane that was just squirrely, as you mentioned. It just wouldn't leave, but it was pretty serious.
Yeah, it was a serious time. And there's a situation where he took the bull by the horns. He didn't check with the program director. He just came in at midnight, and they turned off the program that we had coming in at midnight. And Chuck and Jack Harris went on the air all night long, in fact, all the way into the next day. And our boss said, wow. He said, wow, maybe they're onto something. So next thing you know, Jack Harris's program in the morning is no longer playing 2 songs an hour. We're doing pure talk.
Wow.
And it was based after that coverage show that he and Chuck Carter did.
That is unbelievable, and I've never heard it said that way or even close to it, but you would definitely know that. And this was back in 19 what? With that hurricane? 85.
1985, yep.
I was 15 when you guys were doing that and revolutionized. And look how far talk radio has come since then.
All right. I mean, like big time. Big time.
Now, how many years did you host to the show?
34 years.
My goodness. Well, as long as I've been in Tampa, and I moved here officially to get married in 2001, and I've been hooked to you two guys, Jack Harris, Ted Webb, for years. I always likened you guys to like Groundhog Day. So I'm like, these guys could never leave the radio. They can never leave. They're just too good.
Yeah, well, I had to leave because of health purposes.
We miss you.
I ended up having a heart attack in July 24th of last year, and I ended up spending 23 days in the hospital. And in the process, my kidneys were burned out, so I went on dialysis. I've been on dialysis. In fact, I'm on dialysis right now as I speak to you.
Well, I tell you, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about your friend Chuck, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're talking about a legend in talk radio, but Chuck had a huge heart. He cared about people, and he had always animals around him. He loved cats and dogs. He used to take strays in him and his wife constantly, and I'd say half of his fortune went towards feeding animals and kitty litter.
Oh, I know.
But
Chuck was that way. Chuck was that way about people too.
He had a huge heart. Yeah, people took advantage of that sometimes, though.
Great inspiration to me when I first broke into the business, because 1963 was my rookie year.
Is that right?
He had experience. He had just come down from Illinois, and he sort of took me under his wing and helped me out an awful lot. I never will forget him for that, for the guidance that he gave me when I was just a rookie in this business, and led to a 54-year career, Chuck. Thank you very much, man. I love you. I know you're in heaven.
Amen.
Those are the good deeds you've done for people, man.
So many, too. So many. Mark Levin, before nobody even knew who he was on with Chuck in the early days, and the names just are endless, from Pat Show to...
Touched a lot of people's hearts and a lot of people's careers, I tell you. I'm indebted to him.
He took me under his wing. My dad passed away and immediately came to my rescue and just allowed me to do my thing with him, and grew up because I was a kid, meeting him, and he was smart. He was just a smart guy, and a gambler. I mean, he gambled on his hunches. He had a great feel for the business, man. A great feel for what was going to go over and what was not going to go over. And I tell you, a lot of people doubted him at times. Yeah.
He spent a whole career of people doubting him.
Big media guys thought he was nuts. They thought he was nuts.
He spent a whole career proving to them that he was definitely onto something. He proved them wrong, man.
Well, 300 plus stations, 60 cable outlets, and the news reporter. He had his own newspaper. From the Telford Hotel. He started in a garage here in Tampa, Florida, with the Sun Radio Network.
I remember. I went to that garage.
Oh, no kidding.
I went to that garage. He had that house right there on the river.
That is unbelievable. And that's where it all really kicked off for the national scene for Chuck after he left FLA and then to the Telford. And then it just, he was, second or third to Rush. And according to Talkers Magazine, it was always Chuck on Talkers Magazine because he was just growing so fast. And he got a little hot water with the Clintons because he didn't like this little thing called GATT and NAFTA. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
But he was critical of them. He said, this thing's going to destroy, the American factories and workers. And
it did.
Look what happened.
It did.
I like to think, Ted,
and it did.
I like to think that a lot of his efforts, a lot of things that he said back then when, they thought he was the craziest guy for saying it, that in Donald Trump, though he's not perfect, but he says the same things. We're getting terrible deals with China, which we are.
Right.
We've been sold out, where it's like, gosh, who really owns America now? And we're kind of really just looking at things differently. But I think Donald Trump is certainly in that position because of a lot of the efforts of Chuck and people like him that have a microphone that were able to get this information out. Because you're speaking truth to power, and Chuck really got close to that power, and as a result, and I just still can't believe that this happened to him, but they put an 18-year audit on him. Started by the Clintons. 18-year audit. It's called Silenced. Chuck Harder, you just Google it, and it's been viewed millions of times. But I was telling Phil Paleologos and a bunch of other guests that I had on, we need to do some kind of, docudrama or some kind of short movie, something, to tell that story. Because a lot of people just don't know what happened there. But they took really essentially the greater part of his microphone away from him during that audit, where Chuck had to spend a lot of his own money just to survive. And he was found not guilty of anything that they said that he had done. He didn't do anything wrong. But they did that to be nasty because he was telling the truth on the air. And he had, so many radio stations, and they just hated him.
Well, Clinton was known for weaponizing the IRS. I mean, he wasn't the first president that did that. I know that Dick Nixon used to weaponize the IRS too, and get audits done on political opponents. And I'm sorry it happened to Chuck, but 18 years is just unimaginable. You're right. Somebody should do a movie on that.
It really, and I got to work at the Telford and witness, CNN coming down, trying to do takeout pieces. I don't know if you remember the correspondent's name was John Camp back in the 90s, and I don't know if you...
Oh, yeah.
But they did terrible pieces to make Chuck look like he was part of the militia, that he was one of those guys, a fringe right, and Chuck wasn't. He just... People listened to him, and just because he got listeners that might subscribe to, militia groups didn't make Chuck a militia. But it's amazing. Absolutely. You know how people will paint you because you're a conservative. Oh, you're one of those. You're one of those guys. Yeah, I'm a deplorable.
I've spent a lifetime fighting that. I still get angry emails, and I haven't been on the air since July 31st.
Furious that you would even remotely put you there. He's a misogynist, and he's a bigot, and he's a anti-Semite, and I'm like, God, really? How do you know these things? How do you pin that on him? And, if you ask him straight questions, they have no answers.
No, they can't answer that. I mean, it's just part of an agenda. It's Stalinism. That's a Stalinism trait. Destroy your opponent, however way you can.
They're pretty good at it.
They're excellent at it. I'll tell you that. They're excellent at it. The extreme left of this country scares me to death.
Yeah, you want to talk about fake news? It's once in a while, just do it, just so I can kind of get a good dose of what CNN is putting out there. But you want to talk about the propaganda that the North has been putting out for their people about, the West. That is a propaganda machine, if I ever saw one.
Huge propaganda machine. They and MSNBC battled it out to see who's going to put out the best propaganda.
It's just garbage. And really, I try to say, is there anything newsworthy? Is there anything? Okay, there was a car chase on I-80. All right, Keith Allen here for the people. That was an interview that we did during the tribute to Chuck that's still available online, and it was a 2-hour broadcast. We had 5 guests, so worth listening to. You can find it on our player on our website, and you can hear more of that interview with Ted Webb. But, that's gold right there, folks, liquid gold. To say that there would have been no AM Tampa Bay, there would have been no WFLA Talk, and the networks and just the people that Chuck was influential and inspiring and giving him work. I mean, he had a film lab here in Tampa. A lot of people don't realize that. He did motion picture. He recorded bands. He had a recording studio. Multiple businesses. Chuck was quite the entrepreneur. He was into photography. He just knew a little of everything. there was a broadcast that I'm going to be included, will be including in the book,